6 years ago, on the blazing cliffs of Canyon Ridge, a 7 months pregnant woman stood smiling at the sunset, never suspecting the man she loved was preparing to end her life. Madison Hale thought she was on a romantic baby moon with her billionaire husband, Vincent. She thought the world beneath her feet was safe. She thought she'd return home with photos, memories, and excitement for the baby girl she'd spent months dreaming about. But dreams don't matter to men like Vincent. Empires do. Image does. Freedom from responsibility does. And so, with one gentle hand on her shoulder, one she mistook for affection, Vincent whispered, "Sorry, Mads," and shoved her off the cliff. Her scream was swallowed by the canyon. Her body vanished into the violent waters below. Vincent walked away, believing he had buried his past, his marriage, and his unborn child. But Madison didn't die. The river didn't kill her. It created someone new. And now, 6 years later, she's back. Not as the naive, trusting woman who decorated nurseries and believed in forever. Not as the wife who thought love could conquer ambition. She returned as something Vincent never anticipated. A strategist. A phantom. A woman with nothing left to lose and everything to reclaim. Her name is no longer Madison Hale. The woman who fell from Canyon Ridge died in those waters. The woman who crawled from the wreckage became Grace, then evolved into Avery Quinn, a brilliant consultant who infiltrated Vincent's empire with surgical precision. She walked back into his life wearing designer suits and a smile that never reached her eyes. She shook his hand at foundation galas. She took meetings in the penthouse that used to be hers, and Vincent, arrogant and secure in his perfect crime, never recognized the ghost sitting across from him. But Harper did. Harper Sloan, the influencer who whispered poison into Vincent's ear 6 years ago, sensed something familiar in Avery's eyes. Something dangerous. Something that shouldn't exist. Because women who fall 200 feet don't survive. They don't rebuild. They don't return with law degrees and offshore account access and evidence that could destroy everything. Yet here she was, and she brought hell with her. This is the story of a woman who was supposed to disappear. A mother who was separated from her daughter before she could hold her. A wife betrayed by the man who promised forever. But more than that, this is the story of resurrection. Not the religious kind, but the brutal, calculated kind that happens when someone refuses to stay dead. Madison Hale was thrown away like garbage. Avery Quinn came back to take out the trash. The fall was supposed to be her ending. Instead, it became her beginning. And Vincent Hale, the man who thought he could erase her with one push, was about to learn that some ghosts don't just haunt. They destroy. This is how empires crumble. This is how justice is served cold. This is what happens when you try to kill a mother and leave her child behind. You create a monster with a purpose. The Arizona desert burned gold and crimson as the sun descended toward Canyon Ridge. Madison Hale rested one hand on her swollen belly, feeling the baby kick against her palm with that insistent rhythm that had become her constant companion. 7 months pregnant, glowing with the kind of radiance that comes from believing your life is exactly where it should be. "Come here, Mads," Vincent called from behind her, his voice warm with what she mistook for affection. "The view's better from this angle." She turned, smiling at her husband of 3 years. Vincent Hale looked like he belonged on magazine covers. Sharp jawline, perfectly tailored casual wear. Dark hair swept back with practiced carelessness. Everything about him screamed success, from his Swiss watch to his custom hiking boots that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "I'm trying to get a good shot for the baby book," Madison said, holding up her phone. "I want her to know we brought her here before she was even born. That we were thinking about her. Vincent's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind his eyes. Something Madison, in her trusting contentment, never noticed. "That's sweet," he said, stepping closer. "You're going to be an amazing mother." The words should have warmed her. Instead, they would be the last kind thing he ever said to her. Madison had no way of knowing that Vincent had scouted this exact spot 3 weeks ago, that he'd stood here alone, measuring sight lines and calculating angles, that he'd returned twice more to confirm there were no cameras, no ranger stations, no hiking trails within view, that the woman he'd brought along on those reconnaissance trips wasn't his pregnant wife, but Harper Sloane, the influencer who'd been sleeping in Madison's bed whenever she traveled to visit her mother. Harper had made it simple for him. She always did. "She's an anchor around your neck," Harper had whispered in hotel rooms and empty offices. "You're about to launch your Senate campaign. Do you really want to be tied down by a baby? By a woman who peaked in community college?" Madison had met Vincent at a charity gala where she was working as an event coordinator. He'd pursued her with the intensity of a man who saw something he wanted and took it. She'd been flattered, overwhelmed, and eventually convinced that their different backgrounds didn't matter. That love was enough. She'd been catastrophically wrong. "Vincent, look." Madison leaned forward slightly, pointing at a hawk circling in the canyon below. "Do you think she'll love nature, our daughter?" "I'm sure she would have," Vincent said quietly. Madison turned, confused by the past tense. "Would have?" That's when she saw it, the coldness in his eyes, the set of his jaw, the way he'd positioned himself between her and the path back to the parking lot. "Vincent?" Her voice cracked with the first flutter of real fear. "I'm sorry, Mads," he said. And for just a moment, he might have meant it. "But you're in the way of everything I'm building. Harper made me see that. You and this baby. You're the past. I need to be free." Madison's hand instinctively covered her belly. "What are you talking about? Vincent, you're scaring me." "It'll be quick," he said, stepping forward. "An accident. A terrible tragedy. The grieving widower. It'll be good for the campaign, actually. Sympathy votes." She tried to run. 7 months pregnant, exhausted from the hike up, terrified and disoriented. She tried. But Vincent was faster, stronger, and utterly committed to what he'd convinced himself was necessary. He grabbed her shoulder, and for a split second Madison felt the same hand that had held hers at their wedding, that had rubbed her feet when they were swollen, that had rested on her belly feeling their daughter kick. "Please," she whispered. "Please, Vincent. She's your daughter." "She's a complication," he replied. Then he shoved her with both hands, putting his full weight behind it. Madison's scream tore from her throat as she felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. The world tilted violently. Sky where earth should be, earth where sky belonged. Her hands grasped at empty air. Her mind couldn't process what was happening fast enough to be anything but purely, viscerally terrified. She saw Vincent's face above her, growing smaller. Saw him watching her fall with an expression she would remember in fractured nightmares for years to come. Relief. The canyon wall rushed past in a blur of red rock and scattered vegetation. Madison's body slammed into an outcropping, spinning her sideways. She felt ribs crack, felt her shoulder dislocate, felt pain explode through her in waves that whited out everything else. Then she hit the water. The flash flood that had been carving its way through the canyon for 3 days caught her like a violent, indifferent fist. The current was brutal, filled with debris and rocks and the accumulated rage of a desert storm. It pulled her under immediately, tumbling her body like laundry in a machine. Madison's last conscious thought before the darkness took her was of the baby. She wrapped both arms around her belly as tightly as she could, as if her embrace alone could protect her daughter from what was coming. The river dragged her downstream, her broken body wedging between boulders in a section of the canyon where the water ran deepest and fastest. Her head cracked against stone. Blood clouded the water around her. Above, on the cliff, Vincent pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He waited exactly 7 minutes, long enough to make the timeline believable, then dialed 911. "Help!" he screamed into the phone, forcing panic into his voice. "My wife. She was taking a picture and she slipped. Oh God, she fell. She's pregnant and she fell and I can't see her and—" The dispatcher's calm voice cut through his performance. "Sir, I need you to tell me your exact location." Vincent provided coordinates he'd memorized weeks ago. He stayed on the line, playing the devastated husband with Oscar-worthy commitment. When the first responders arrived 20 minutes later, they found him sitting on the ground, head in his hands, shoulders shaking with manufactured sobs. "I tried to grab her," he told them over and over. "I tried. She just slipped." They searched until dark. They searched the next day. They found Madison's phone, shattered on the rocks. They found one of her shoes, caught in a bush halfway down the cliff. They never found her body. After 3 days, the search was called off. The official report listed Madison Hale as deceased, victim of an accidental fall. Vincent held a memorial service. He cried on cue. He accepted condolences with appropriate grief. And then he went home to Harper, who was already redecorating the penthouse. "It's done?" she asked. "It's done," Vincent confirmed. Neither of them knew that 6 miles downstream, a wildlife photographer named Marcus Devine had just spotted something wedged between 2 boulders in a section of the canyon he'd been documenting for a conservation project. Something that looked like a person. Something that was, impossibly, still breathing. Marcus Devine had been photographing desert wildlife for 15 years. He'd seen coyotes take down deer, witnessed rattlesnakes strike, documented the brutal efficiency of nature's food chain. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the broken woman he found wedged between boulders in the depths of Canyon Ridge. She was alive. Barely, but alive. Holy! Marcus dropped his camera and scrambled down the rocks, his satellite phone already in his hand. "Stay with me," he said, though the woman showed no signs of consciousness. "I've got you." Her face was swollen, bruised purple and black. Her left arm bent at an angle that made Marcus's stomach turn. But it was her belly that made him realize the true horror of what he'd found. The unmistakable curve of late-term pregnancy, and the way her arms were still wrapped around it, even unconscious. She'd been trying to protect her baby even as she died. "This is Marcus Devine. I'm 6.3 miles southeast of Canyon Ridge Main Trail." He spoke rapidly into the phone. "I have an emergency. Unconscious woman. Appears to have fallen. Multiple fractures, heavily pregnant. I need immediate helicopter evacuation." The voice on the other end asked questions. Marcus answered what he could. No, he didn't know who she was. No, there was no one else around. Yes, he could detect a faint pulse. The helicopter took 40 minutes to arrive. Marcus spent every second of that time talking to the unconscious woman, his hand checking her pulse, making sure she was still breathing. "You're going to be okay," he lied. "You and your baby. Just hold on." When the paramedics loaded her onto the stretcher, one of them checked her vitals and looked at Marcus with an expression that said everything. This woman shouldn't be alive. But she was. Desert Regional Medical Center's trauma team had seen their share of hiking accidents, but nothing like this. The woman had fallen at least 150 feet, been swept through a flash flood, and somehow remained alive for an estimated 12 to 16 hours before discovery. Massive internal bleeding, Dr. Raina Mitchell reported to her team. Multiple fractures, severe head trauma, and she paused, her hand on the patient's belly. Fetal heartbeat is there, but it's weak. Do we have an ID? One of the nurses asked. Nothing. No purse, no phone, no jewelry. Just her, and whatever miracle kept her breathing this long. The decision was made quickly. Emergency C-section. The baby couldn't survive much longer in a body this damaged, and the mother needed immediate surgery that would be impossible with a pregnancy intact. They operated in a silent dance of urgency. The baby, a tiny girl, premature but fierce, was delivered at 11:47 p.m. She came out screaming, a sound that made the entire surgical team release breaths they didn't know they'd been holding. She's a fighter, the neonatal nurse said, wrapping the tiny body in warming blankets. Just like her mom. The mother, however, didn't wake up. They stabilized her, set bones, stopped bleeding, reduced swelling, but the head trauma was severe. She slipped into a coma that doctors warned might be permanent. Jane Doe, they wrote on her chart. Approximate age, late 20s, no identification, no next of kin. The baby, labeled Baby Doe, was placed in the NICU. 3 pounds, 2 ounces. Born fighting for her life before she'd even had a chance to live it. 70 miles away, Vincent Hale sat in his penthouse, watching news coverage of Madison's memorial service. Harper brought him scotch and settled onto the couch beside him, her head on his shoulder. "You were very convincing," she said. "I loved her once," Vincent replied quietly, "before she became an obstacle. And now you're free." Harper's hand traced patterns on his chest. "Free to become everything you're meant to be." "Senator Hale has a nice ring to it." Vincent smiled. "It does." Neither of them spoke of the baby. In Vincent's narrative, the one he'd already sold to friends, family, and the media, Madison had died with their unborn daughter. A double tragedy. A grieving widower who would channel his pain into public service. The story was perfect, clean, sympathetic, except Madison Hale wasn't dead. For 3 months, Jane Doe lay in a medically induced coma while her brain slowly healed. The hospital tried everything to identify her. Fingerprints, dental records, missing persons reports. Nothing matched. It was as if she'd fallen from the sky with no past, no identity, no connection to the world beyond the canyon that had nearly killed her. Baby Doe thrived in the NICU, beating every odd stacked against her. She gained weight. Her lungs strengthened. The nurses fell in love with her, this tiny warrior with no name and no family. "She needs a home," the social worker said gently to the hospital administrator. "We can't keep her in the NICU indefinitely." "And her mother?" "The doctors say she might never wake up. And even if she does, the damage is extensive. She may not remember who she is, let alone that she has a daughter." So Baby Doe entered the foster system. She was placed with a family in Phoenix. Good people who specialized in medical foster care, who could handle a premature infant's complex needs. They named her Lily, after the flowers in their garden. The name stuck. Lily Doe became Lily Rodriguez when they eventually adopted her at age 2, after years of searching for any biological family member proved fruitless. She would grow up believing her birth mother had abandoned her, that she was unwanted, that whatever love existed in the world, it hadn't been meant for her. She would be wrong on every count. 5 months after the fall, Jane Doe opened her eyes. The world came back in fragments. White ceiling tiles, the beep of monitors, fluorescent lights that hurt to look at. A nurse leaned over her, speaking words that sounded like they were coming through water. "Can you hear me? Can you tell me your name?" The woman in the bed tried to answer. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. She tried again, forcing air through damaged vocal cords. "I don't know." The nurse's expression shifted from relief to concern. "You don't know your name?" The woman, Jane Doe, Madison Hale, whoever she had been, shook her head slightly. The movement sent lightning through her skull. Memories were there. She could feel them, but they were scattered like puzzle pieces in a dark room. Fragments of faces, echoes of voices, the sensation of falling, always falling. But her name, her life, her identity, gone. "It's okay," the nurse said gently. "You've been through significant trauma. The memories may come back with time." They never fully did. What did come back in jagged pieces over the following months were sensations more than memories. The feeling of a hand on her shoulder, the color red, like a dress someone wore, the sound of water rushing, and something else. Something that woke her up screaming in the middle of physical therapy sessions. A baby crying. Was I? She struggled with the words, her hands moving to her stomach where she found only scars. "Was there a baby?" Dr. Mitchell sat down beside her bed. This conversation had been inevitable and heartbreaking. "Yes," she said quietly. "You delivered a daughter. Emergency C-section. She survived." Jane Doe's face crumpled. "Where is she?" "She's in foster care. We had no way to identify you, and you were comatose for months. We had to find her a safe home. I want her back." The words came out fierce, cutting through the fog of amnesia with sudden clarity. "I don't know who I am, but I know she's mine. I want her back." Dr. Mitchell took her hand. "I know, but legally, without identification, without any proof of who you are, it's complicated." "Then tell me where she is. Tell me her name." "I can't. Privacy laws, protection of the child. She's my child." "I believe you. But the system doesn't work on belief. It works on documentation. And until we can figure out who you are, until we can verify your identity and prove you're stable enough to care for an infant, I'm sorry." Jane Doe turned her face away, tears streaming into her hair. Somewhere in Phoenix, a 6-month-old baby girl was learning to smile at strangers who thought she was theirs. And in New York, Vincent Hale announced his Senate campaign to thunderous applause, his hand in Harper's, his reputation polished by tragedy into something heroic and sympathetic. The pieces were in place, the players were positioned. The woman with no name lay in a hospital bed, broken but alive, robbed of everything but her will to survive. She didn't know it yet, but that will would be enough, more than enough. They called her Grace because she had to be called something, and the hospital chaplain suggested it. "You survived by grace," he said. "Maybe that's who you are now." Grace didn't argue. Madison was a ghost she couldn't remember clearly enough to resurrect. Jane Doe was a placeholder for a life that had been erased. Grace was simple, clean, and most importantly, didn't come with the weight of a past she couldn't access. The rehab was brutal. Her left leg had been shattered in 7 places. Her arm required 3 surgeries to set properly. Her ribs had punctured a lung. The head trauma left her with migraines that felt like her skull was splitting open, and every night, without fail, she dreamed of falling. The same dream, always. The sensation of solid ground disappearing. Wind rushing past. The moment of impact that her conscious mind had blacked out, but her body remembered with crystal clarity. She woke screaming more nights than not. PTSD, the psychiatrist said gently. Your mind is processing trauma your memory can't fully access. It's common with amnesia patients. I don't want common, Grace said, her voice still rough from intubation damage. I want my daughter. I know, but first, you need to learn to walk again. So she did, step by agonizing step, holding onto rails and then canes, and finally, after 8 months of physical therapy, walking unaided through the hospital corridors. Her limp would never fully disappear, but she could move, she could function. The social worker visited once a week. Without documentation, we can't reunite you with your child, she explained, not unkindly. We've run your prints through every database, your face through facial recognition. Nothing matches. It's like you didn't exist before the canyon. I existed, Grace said fiercely. I had a life. I had a daughter. Someone knows me. Then someone needs to come forward. Until then, legally, you're a Jane Doe with no parental rights. The injustice of it burned hotter than any physical pain. She'd survived a fall that should have killed her. She'd fought her way back from a coma. She'd learned to walk again. And all of it meant nothing, because she couldn't prove who she was. The hospital couldn't keep her indefinitely. After 14 months, they discharged her to a transitional living facility for patients with nowhere else to go. She was given clothing from donations, $200 from a victim's assistance fund, and pamphlets about social services. Good luck, Grace, Dr. Mitchell said at her discharge, hugging her carefully. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. Grace walked out of the hospital with a limp, a duffel bag, and a rage she didn't fully understand but couldn't extinguish. She worked whatever jobs would take someone with no ID, no social security number, no verifiable past, under-the-table kitchen work, cleaning houses for cash. One elderly woman, Mrs. Kowalski, paid her to organize a lifetime of hoarded documents and didn't ask questions. You seem like you're running from something, Mrs. Kowalski said one afternoon, handing Grace tea. Maybe, Grace admitted. Or maybe I'm running towards something I can't quite remember. Either way, child, you've got fire in you. Don't let it burn out. Grace saved every penny. She slept in a shared room at a women's shelter, ate 1 meal a day, and spent her free time at the library, reading, learning, rebuilding the person she couldn't remember being. The dreams of falling continued, but new elements started appearing. A man's voice, cold and apologetic. A woman laughing. The feeling of a hand on her shoulder before the world disappeared. Not an accident. The realization came slowly, then all at once. Someone pushed me. The thought made her hands shake. She was in a library computer lab when it hit her, searching through missing persons databases for the 1,000th time. Her fingers froze on the keyboard. Someone tried to kill me, and they took my daughter. But who? And why? Without memories, she had no answers, just the growing certainty that she hadn't slipped, that someone had wanted her dead badly enough to throw her pregnant body off a cliff. 18 months after waking up, Grace was working a catering event at a hotel in Flagstaff when she saw it, a TV in the lobby tuned to cable news. She was carrying a tray of champagne glasses when the anchor's voice cut through the ambient noise. Senate candidate Vincent Hale and his partner, media influencer Harper Sloan, made a surprise appearance at the Children's Charity Gala last night. Hale, you may remember, tragically lost his pregnant wife Madison 3 years ago in a hiking accident. The tray slipped from Grace's hands. Crystal shattered across marble. But she didn't hear it. Didn't hear the other servers asking if she was okay. Didn't hear anything except the roar of blood in her ears as she stared at the screen. At the man with the perfect smile and expensive suit. At the woman beside him in red, her hand possessively on his arm. And she remembered. Not everything, not yet. But enough. The Colorado ski trips, the way he liked his coffee, the sound of his voice saying, "Sorry, Mads," before the world fell away. The feeling of his hands, on her shoulders, pushing. "Vincent," she whispered. The name tasted like poison and recognition, an absolute crystalline fury. A server touched her arm. "Miss, are you okay? You're bleeding." Grace looked down. She'd grabbed a piece of broken glass hard enough to cut her palm. Blood dripped onto white marble, bright red, and absolutely nothing compared to the rage flooding her system. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice sounded different, harder, better than fine. Because now she knew. Now she understood. Vincent Hale, her husband, her baby's father, had tried to murder her. Had thrown her off a cliff while she was 7 months pregnant, had walked away believing she was dead, and had used her death to build sympathy for a political career. And the woman beside him, Harper Sloan, had been there too. Not on the cliff, perhaps, but in the background of some memories, whispering, laughing. Red dress at a party where Madison had felt inexplicably unwelcome in her own life. They'd done this together. They'd tried to kill her and stolen her daughter. Grace stood in the lobby of that hotel, glass crunching under her shoes, and felt something click into place that had been broken for 2 years. She knew who she was. She knew what had been done to her. And she knew, with absolute certainty, what she had to do next. Not Grace, not Jane Doe, not even Madison Hale anymore. Someone new. Someone Vincent and Harper would never see coming. Someone who would burn their perfect life to ashes and take back everything they'd stolen. She walked out of that hotel and never went back. Didn't collect her wages. Didn't say goodbye. She headed straight to the library and started making plans. The woman who fell from the cliff was dead. The woman who climbed out of that canyon was something else entirely. She just needed a new name. Grace stayed in that library until the staff kicked her out at closing. She returned the next morning when the doors opened, commandeering the same computer terminal, diving into research with the focused intensity of someone who'd just found the missing piece of their life. Vincent Hale, born to old money, Columbia graduate, hedge fund success before 30. Married Madison Torres, her maiden name sent a jolt through her system, 4 years ago in a private ceremony in the Hamptons. Widowed when his pregnant wife died in a tragic accident at Canyon Ridge 3 years ago. Liar, Grace muttered, scrolling through article after article. The media had eaten up his grief. Photos of Vincent at Madison's memorial service. Face buried in his hands. Interviews where he talked about channeling his pain into public service. Opinion pieces praising his resilience, his dedication to children's charities in honor of the daughter he'd lost. Harper Sloan appeared in his life 6 months after Madison's death, according to public records, but Grace's fragmenting memories suggested she'd been there much longer. She pulled up Harper's social media, scrolling through polished photos of a woman who built her brand on lifestyle perfection and aspirational content. A woman whose comment history, buried deep in archives, showed her engaging with Vincent's posts months before Madison fell. "You were there the whole time," Grace said to the screen. The next search was harder. Madison Hale obituary. Baby. The articles made her stomach turn. Madison Hale, 27, and her unborn daughter perished in a hiking accident. Vincent's quotes about the double tragedy that had forever changed him. But her daughter hadn't died. Grace had felt her move, heard her cry. The hospital had told her the baby survived. So where was she? 4 hours of searching through foster system regulations, Arizona Child Services policies, and adoption records led her to a grim conclusion. Without identity verification, the baby would have been placed in foster care. After Madison was declared legally dead, which happened about a year after the fall, the child would have been free for adoption. She could be anywhere, living with any family, carrying any name. Grace's daughter was out there, alive, and had no idea her real mother had survived. The realization didn't break her. It forged her into something harder, sharper, absolutely committed to a path most people would call crazy. She was going to find her daughter. She was going to destroy the people who'd tried to kill her. And she was going to do it by becoming someone Vincent and Harper would never recognize. Someone they'd invite right into their lives. The transformation started small. Grace had saved $3,000 from her under-the-table work. She spent the first $500 on a cheap laptop from a pawn shop and a month's rent at a room above a bar that didn't ask questions. Then she started building an identity. Grace Mitchell, close enough to her hospital name to remember, different enough to avoid flags. She found a woman in Tucson who specialized in providing documentation services for people who needed to disappear or reappear. For $1,000, Grace walked away with a social security card, birth certificate, and employment history for a Grace Mitchell who'd grown up in Oregon, worked various administrative jobs, and conveniently had no digital footprint before 2 years ago. "You didn't get this from me," the woman said, sliding the envelope across the table. "I was never here," Grace agreed. With identification came possibilities. She enrolled in online community college courses using financial aid. Business administration, marketing, communications. She devoured the material, driven by a hunger to understand Vincent's world well enough to infiltrate it. The migraine still came. The dreams of falling still jolted her awake. But Grace, now Mitchell, not the hospital's gift of a name, learned to channel the pain into fuel. She moved to Phoenix, closer to where her daughter had to be. Worked legitimate jobs now, administrative assistant, then office manager for a small PR firm. Her boss, Carrie, became the first person in this new life to see past the carefully constructed walls. "You're overqualified for this job," Carrie said bluntly one day, "and you work like someone's chasing you. What's your real story?" Grace considered lying, then decided the truth, or part of it, might be useful. "Someone hurt me badly, took something from me. I'm getting it back." Carrie studied her for a long moment. "Need any help?" "Maybe eventually. Right now, I need experience. Skills. Your firm works with political campaigns, right?" "Sometimes. Why?" "Teach me everything you know about image management, crisis PR, and how to make powerful people trust you." Carrie's eyebrows rose. "This is about revenge, isn't it? This is about justice. There's a difference?" Grace smiled, cold and certain. "Not when you're the one serving it." 2 years of calculated preparation followed. Grace Mitchell became fluent in the language of Vincent's world: charity galas, political networking, media strategy. She lost the limp through relentless physical therapy, changed her hair from the brown Madison wore to platinum blonde, lost 20 pounds her body had gained during recovery, learned to walk in heels that cost more than her monthly rent, to speak with the polished confidence of someone who belonged in rooms where decisions worth millions were made. She studied Vincent's campaign, his foundation, his public appearances, memorized his schedule, his habits, his inner circle. Harper's Instagram became required reading, every photo analyzed for details about their life, their vulnerabilities, their patterns. And she searched for her daughter, every foster system database she could hack, every adoption lawyer she could discreetly contact, every playground in Phoenix where she might catch a glimpse of a 4-year-old girl with her eyes. Nothing. The foster system protected its children too well, and Grace lacked the resources to break through those walls. Yet. "You're moving to New York," Carrie said one morning, holding up an email. "I got you an interview with the Hale Foundation, executive assistant to the director." Grace's carefully constructed composure cracked for just a second. "How?" "I have connections, and I believe in second acts." Carrie handed her the printed email. "Also, I Googled Madison Hale after our conversation 2 years ago. Found her photos. You don't look exactly like her anymore, but those eyes." She paused. "Go get your daughter back, and make him pay." Grace's throat tightened. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll be smart about this. Men like Vincent Hale don't go down easy." "Neither," Grace said quietly. "Do women who survive 200-foot falls." The interview was in 3 weeks. Grace spent every moment preparing, researching the Foundation's work, Vincent's political positions, the board members and their histories. She created a portfolio of her work at Carrie's firm, references from people who'd never met Madison Hale, a narrative of Grace Mitchell's career that was ambitious but believable. The night before she flew to New York, she stood in her apartment bathroom studying her reflection. The woman looking back didn't look like Madison. Not anymore. Grace had made sure of it. But something in the eyes remained, something that might give her away if Vincent looked too closely. She practiced smiling, neutral and professional. Practiced shaking hands without flinching. Practiced saying Vincent's name without letting hatred bleed into her tone. "My name is Grace Mitchell," she told her reflection. "I'm a professional with impressive credentials and no connection to Vincent Hale beyond this job opportunity. I do not know him. I do not hate him. I'm a blank slate who admires his foundation's work." The woman in the mirror nodded. Ready. Grace turned off the light and went to pack. 3 weeks later, she walked into the Hale Foundation's Manhattan offices, wearing a designer suit she'd bought second-hand. Her new identity settled around her like armor. The receptionist smiled. "You must be Miss Mitchell. They're expecting you in conference room A." "Thank you," Grace said, her voice steady despite the way her heart hammered against her ribs. She followed the hallway, each step bringing her closer to the man who'd murdered her, to the life she'd crawl back into as a stranger, to the beginning of the longest, most dangerous con she'd ever attempt. The conference room door was open. Inside, 3 people sat around a polished table: the foundation director, an HR representative, and Vincent Hale. Older than her scattered memories suggested. Silver threading his temples now, lines around his eyes from smiling for cameras. He wore a suit that probably cost what Grace used to make in 6 months. His wedding ring, the one Madison had picked out, she remembered with a jolt, was gone, replaced by a plain platinum band that matched the one on Harper's hand in photos. He looked up as she entered. His eyes met hers, and nothing, no recognition, no fear. Just polite professional interest in a candidate for his foundation. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, standing to shake her hand. Thank you for coming. I've heard excellent things about your work in Phoenix. Grace took his hand, the hand that had pushed her, the hand that had tried to end her life, and smiled. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Hale. Your foundation's work is inspiring. His grip was firm, confident, the grip of a man who'd gotten away with murder and never looked back. Please, have a seat, he said. Let's talk about your vision for strategic communications in the non-profit space. Grace sat across from her would-be killer and began the interview that would change everything. She was inside. Now the real work could begin. 3 months into working at the Hale Foundation, Grace Mitchell decided she needed to evolve again. The job was perfect for reconnaissance, close enough to observe Vincent's operations without directly reporting to him, visible enough at events to become a familiar face, trusted enough to access files and schedules and the inner workings of his public persona. But Grace Mitchell was too close to Grace from the hospital, too forgettable, too safe. She needed something sharper, more memorable. Someone Vincent would want to keep close, not just professionally, but personally. Someone whose presence in his life would feel inevitable rather than suspicious. She needed to become Avery Quinn. The name came from a novel Madison had loved, about a woman who rebuilt herself after loss. Avery was sophisticated, ambitious, someone who moved through power circles with ease. Quinn was strong, Irish, unexpected for someone who looked like her. I'm rebranding, she told Carrie during one of their weekly phone calls. To what? Avery Quinn. Grace Mitchell was the resume that got me in the door. Avery Quinn is who I'm becoming. Legally? Eventually. For now, professionally. I'm launching a consulting practice, strategic communications for nonprofits and political campaigns. The foundation will be my first major client. Carrie was quiet for a moment. You're making yourself indispensable. I'm making myself family. Grace, Avery, corrected. Vincent collects useful people. I'm going to be so useful he can't imagine his empire without me. And then I dismantle it from the inside. The transformation was meticulous. Avery Quinn had a website, a LinkedIn profile, testimonials from carefully cultivated connections. She wore sharper suits, more expensive jewelry purchased from consignment shops. She joined the right gym, attended the right gallery openings, made herself visible in the social ecosystems where Vincent and Harper operated. The foundation work gave her credibility. Within 6 months, she'd improved their donor retention by 34% and landed them features in 3 major publications. Vincent noticed. I want to bring you on for the campaign, he said one afternoon, catching her after a strategy meeting. Not just foundation work, my Senate run, full communication strategy. Avery let the appropriate amount of surprise and excitement cross her face. I'm honored. But that's a significant step up from non-profit work. You're ready. Vincent's smile was warm, genuine in the way that made him so dangerous. Harper agrees. She's been watching your work. Says you have the kind of instincts we need. The mention of Harper made Avery's skin crawl, but she kept her expression neutral. I'd love to meet with her. Discuss vision, messaging strategy. Dinner. Next week. Our place. Vincent handed her a card with an address in Tribeca. Bring your best ideas. And Avery? Yes? I knew the moment I met you that you were special. I'm glad my instincts were right. Avery watched him walk away, that familiar confidence in every step. The same confidence that had allowed him to push his pregnant wife off a cliff and sleep soundly afterward. Your instincts, she murmured, are about to destroy you. The invitation to Vincent and Harper's home was both opportunity and risk. She'd be in their private space, observed by Harper's notoriously sharp instincts. One wrong detail, a gesture Madison used to make, a phrase she'd said, anything that pinged recognition, could end everything. Avery prepared like she was going to war. She studied hours of video footage of how she moved now versus how Madison had moved. Madison had been gentler, softer in her gestures. Avery was decisive, sharp, almost masculine in her confidence. Madison had smiled with her whole face. Avery's smiles were controlled, strategic. She practiced conversations in front of mirrors, rehearsed her origin story until it felt more real than Madison's memories. Grace Mitchell from Oregon became Avery Quinn from Seattle, business school dropout who'd built her career through hustle and talent, never married, no children, driven by ambition and independence. Everything Madison wasn't. Everything Harper would respect. The night of the dinner, Avery stood outside the Tribeca building, studying her reflection in the glass. Black suit tailored to perfection. Hair swept back in a style Madison never wore. Makeup bold enough to command attention but professional enough to avoid questions. She looked nothing like the woman who'd decorated a nursery and believed in forever. The doorman let her up. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt both too long and too short. And when the doors opened into the apartment that used to be hers, redecorated, transformed, stripped of every trace of Madison's existence, Avery felt the rage try to surface. She pushed it down, smiled, stepped into her own stolen home like she'd never seen it before. "Avery!" Harper appeared from the kitchen, wine glass in hand, looking effortlessly elegant in casual designer wear. "Come in." "Vincent's just finishing a call." They air-kissed, the social ritual making Avery's skin crawl. Harper smelled like expensive perfume and entitlement. "Your home is gorgeous," Avery said, scanning the space that used to have Madison's books on those shelves, Madison's art on those walls, Madison's life in every corner. "Thank you. We renovated recently. Fresh start, you know?" Harper's eyes were calculating, measuring Avery in a way that felt like an X-ray. "Vincent speaks very highly of you. He's an inspiring client." "He's more than that, though, isn't he? Vincent has a gift for finding people who become essential." Harper sipped her wine. "Like me. Like you, potentially." There was something in her tone, not quite a warning, not quite a test, but close to both. "I'm committed to the work," Avery said carefully. "Whatever form that takes." Harper's smile sharpened. "Good answer." Vincent emerged from his office, embracing Avery with the casual warmth of someone who had no idea he was hugging a ghost. "Thank you for coming. Let's eat and talk strategy." Dinner was an elaborate performance. Avery pitched ideas for the campaign, each one calculated to be brilliant enough to impress but not so revolutionary it seemed suspicious. She listened to Vincent's vision for his Senate seat, nodded in the right places, asked questions that made him feel heard. But it was Harper she watched most carefully. The way Harper touched Vincent's arm possessively, the way she finished his sentences, controlled the conversation's flow, made subtle corrections to his statements. This wasn't just a relationship. Harper was the puppet master, Vincent the charismatic face. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," Vincent said at one point, the grief in his voice so practiced it sounded real. "Madison, she and our daughter. An accident." Avery maintained perfect composure. "I'm so sorry. It changed everything for me. Made me realize life is short, that we have to fight for what matters." He reached for Harper's hand. "I found love again. Found purpose. That's what I want to bring to the Senate. That sense of hope after tragedy." "It's a powerful narrative," Avery said. Internally, "You're a powerful liar." Harper leaned forward. "Vincent sees the best in everyone. It's both his strength and his vulnerability. That's why he needs people around him who can be more discerning. Meaning. Meaning the higher he rises, the more people will try to use him, take advantage of his grief, his reputation, his success. Harper's eyes locked onto Avery's. We need to know the people in his inner circle are loyal, trustworthy, clean. It was an interrogation disguised as philosophy. Avery met it head-on. I understand. Trust is earned, not given. My background is transparent, my work speaks for itself. But if you need additional vetting, I'm an open book. The tension held for a moment. Then Harper smiled. I don't think that'll be necessary. Vincent's instincts are rarely wrong, and mine are telling me you're exactly what we need. Thank you. But Avery? Harper's voice dropped. Don't make us regret bringing you into our family. The word family landed like a threat. Avery smiled back, matching Harper's intensity. I wouldn't dream of it. The campaign officially launched 3 months later. Avery Quinn became Vincent Hale's Director of Strategic Communications, a position that put her in every major meeting, every planning session, every private conversation about the future. She moved to Manhattan permanently, rented an apartment 3 blocks from Central Park, built a life that looked successful, independent, enviable, made sure Vincent and Harper saw her at the right restaurants, the right events, always professional, always brilliant, always just outside their inner circle, but close enough to matter. And she searched for her daughter. The move to New York had been strategic in multiple ways. If her daughter had been adopted, records might have crossed state lines. New York had databases, connections, resources Arizona lacked. Avery hired a private investigator, one who took cash and didn't ask questions, to search for any adoption from Arizona foster care to families in Phoenix, flagging children born premature, female, around the time Madison fell. The list came back with 47 names. Avery spent months narrowing it down, eliminating cases where birth parents were known, where the mother was confirmed deceased with death certificates, not just missing persons, where the timeline didn't match. Eventually, she had 3 possibilities. 3 families in Phoenix with adopted daughters the right age, adopted at the right time, from foster placements that originated from a Jane Doe mother who'd been comatose. One of them had to be hers, but approaching any of them without proof would alert the system, could trigger investigations, might expose her identity before she was ready. She needed more than maternal instinct. She needed legal leverage. She needed Vincent destroyed and unable to contest custody. She needed to be patient. 18 months into her position with the campaign, Vincent called her into his office for what he termed a sensitive conversation. I want to bring you into something, he said, closing the door. The foundation has a special project, adoption advocacy, helping children in foster care find permanent homes. Harper's driving it. It's become her passion. Avery's blood went cold. That's beautiful work. It is. But between us? Vincent lowered his voice. It's also personal. We've been talking about adoption ourselves. Harper can't have children biologically, and after losing Madison and the baby, I thought I was done. But Harper's made me see that giving a child a home could be healing. He wanted to adopt. They wanted to adopt. Avery maintained her expression through sheer force of will. That's a big step. It's the right one. And I'd like you to help with the messaging. How we present this publicly, how it fits into the campaign narrative. Vincent smiled. Your family now, Avery. I trust you with this. Family. The word again, used by the man who'd destroyed hers. Of course, Avery said. I'm honored. She left his office and made it to the bathroom before the shaking started. They wanted to adopt, which meant they'd be scrutinized, investigated, deemed worthy of a child, while Madison's actual daughter was somewhere in the system, growing up without her real mother. The injustice of it was suffocating, but it also meant opportunity. Adoption records would be created, trails that could be followed, and Avery would be managing the publicity, which meant access to details, to timelines, to the specific type of child they were seeking. "Not my daughter," she whispered to her reflection. "You won't have her too." That night, Avery made the decision that would define everything that followed. She was done being patient, done gathering evidence quietly, done waiting for the perfect moment. Vincent and Harper had taken 3 years from her. They'd stolen her child, her identity, her life. They'd built an empire on her grave and called it grief. Time to show them what ghosts could do. Avery Quinn, Strategic Communications Director and trusted member of the Hale Inner Circle, began planning the most public, devastating takedown in recent political history. And Madison Hale, the woman who'd fallen from Canyon Ridge, started the climb back up. The Hale Foundation's annual gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a spectacle of wealth and influence that cost $500,000 to organize and raised $3 million for children in need. Avery Quinn stood in the Temple of Dender, champagne glass in hand, watching Vincent work the room with practiced charm while Harper held court near the reflecting pool, influencer friends orbiting her like planets around the sun. "You've outdone yourself," the foundation director told Avery. "This is our most successful event in 5 years." "Thank you," Avery said, her smile not reaching her eyes, because success here meant enabling Vincent's image rehabilitation. Every dollar raised, every glowing profile, every respected philanthropist who shook his hand added another layer of legitimacy to a man who'd committed murder and walked free. But it also meant access, trust, the kind of proximity that let Avery move through Vincent's life like she belonged there, because to everyone watching, she did. "Avery!" Harper appeared at her elbow, already 2 glasses past elegance. "Come meet someone. This is Senator Warren's chief of staff. She wants to talk about our adoption initiative." The adoption initiative. Harper's pet project. The one that was supposed to cement their image as selfless champions for children. The one that made Avery's stomach turn every time it was mentioned. She followed Harper to a cluster of political operatives and non-profit leaders, all of them discussing the foster care crisis with the detached intellectualism of people who'd never experienced it. "Avery's been instrumental in our messaging," Harper said, her hand proprietary on Avery's arm. "She understands how to make policy personal, emotional." "Because she believes in the work," Vincent added, joining them. He put his arm around Avery's shoulders in a gesture that was becoming increasingly common, casual, familial, utterly oblivious to the way it made her skin crawl. "Avery's more than staff, she's family." There it was again. That word, used so easily by people who had no concept of what family actually meant. Avery extricated herself politely and went to check on the program's schedule. Behind the scenes, away from cameras and admirers, she pulled out her phone and opened the encrypted folder where she'd been collecting evidence for months. Financial records showing foundation donations funneled into Vincent's personal investments. Email chains revealing Harper's awareness of Vincent's problem with Madison before the fall. Phone logs placing them both in Arizona during a romantic weekend, the week before Madison died, the week Vincent had scouted the cliff. And the piece that would make everything else matter, medical records from Desert Regional, showing a Jane Doe patient with injuries consistent with a fall, who'd delivered a premature baby girl on the exact night Madison was declared missing. Avery had spent a fortune, most of her savings and money she'd borrowed from sources she probably shouldn't have, getting those records through a contact who owed her favors. They weren't admissible in court, not obtained this way, but they were enough for public opinion, Enough for journalists to start asking questions, enough to destroy the narrative Vincent had built. Almost time, but not yet. 2 weeks after the gala, Harper invited Avery to lunch at a restaurant in Soho. Just the two of them. No Vincent, no campaign staff. Alarm bells went off immediately, but Avery accepted with practiced enthusiasm. They met at a place where Harper was recognized by the host, given the best table, treated like royalty. Harper ordered for both of them without asking, a power move Avery noted but didn't challenge. "I wanted to talk to you about something sensitive," Harper said once the waiter left. "About Vincent." Avery sipped her water, waiting. "He's become attached to you. More than is probably appropriate for a professional relationship." Harper's smile was sharp. "I'm not threatened, but I am protective. Vincent's been through so much loss. I won't let anyone hurt him again." The implication was clear. Back off or face consequences. Avery met Harper's gaze directly. "I have no romantic interest in Vincent. My relationship with him is entirely professional." "I believe you. But Vincent sees the world differently than we do. He sees goodness, potential, loyalty. He doesn't see manipulation until it's too late." Harper leaned forward. "His first wife, Madison. She was sweet but fundamentally opportunistic. Married him for his money, got pregnant to trap him. Vincent was too kind to see it until it was almost too late." Avery's fingers tightened on her water glass. "That must have been difficult." "It was devastating. That's why her death, tragic as it was, came as something of a release." Harper's eyes were cold, calculating. "Vincent was finally free to be the man he was meant to be. And I made sure he stayed free." The confession was delivered casually, like discussing the weather. Avery realized with chilling clarity that Harper was testing her, seeing if Avery would be shocked, would judge, would reveal any sympathy for the woman they'd murdered. "You did what you thought was right," Avery said carefully. "Protected someone you love." Harper's smile warmed fractionally. "Exactly. I knew you'd understand. You're like me, Avery. You see the world clearly. You do what needs to be done." "I try. That's why I need to ask you something." Harper's voice dropped. "How far would you go to protect this family, to protect Vincent's future?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Avery thought of her daughter, somewhere in Phoenix, growing up without her, of the years stolen, of the life she'd been forced to rebuild from nothing, of Madison's body broken on rocks, while Vincent called 911 with manufactured grief. "As far as necessary," she said. Harper studied her for a long moment, then nodded, satisfied. "Good. Because the campaign is entering a critical phase. Opponents will dig into Vincent's past, try to find vulnerabilities. That accident with Madison. Some conspiracy theorists online have started questioning the official narrative." Avery's heart rate spiked, but she kept her expression neutral. "Questioning how?" "Timing, mostly. The fact that no body was found. Harper's convenient appearance in Vincent's life shortly after." Harper waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense, of course. But narratives can be dangerous, even false ones. I need to know that you'll help shut down any questions. Use your media contacts, your communication skills. Make sure the story stays simple. Tragic accident. Grieving widower. Moved on with his life." She was asking Avery to bury the truth, to be complicit in the cover-up of her own murder. "Of course," Avery said. "I'll prepare response strategies for any media inquiries. Make sure the narrative stays on message. I knew I could count on you." Harper reached across the table, squeezing Avery's hand. You really are family now. Vincent was right about you. The touch made Avery want to vomit, but she smiled, squeezed back, and played her part perfectly. That night, Avery sat in her apartment with the lights off, staring at the city through her windows. Harper's words echoed. Her death came as something of a release. They'd killed her, not in a moment of passion or panic, but as a calculated decision to free Vincent from an inconvenient marriage and unwanted child, and Harper had just admitted it, casual as discussing a business decision, confident that Avery would understand because they were alike. The rage that lived in Avery's chest threatened to consume her, but rage wasn't useful yet. It needed to be cold, directed, weaponized. She opened her laptop and pulled up the files she'd been building, added notes from the lunch conversation, Harper's words about Madison being opportunistic, about her death being a release, hearsay in court, but devastating in public opinion. Her phone rang. The private investigator. I found something, he said without preamble. One of your 3 names, Lily Rodriguez, adopted at age 2 from foster care. Emergency placement from Desert Regional after birth, mother was declared deceased. Avery's hands started shaking. Are you certain? Medical records match. Birth weight, premature delivery date, emergency C-section. Mother listed as Jane Doe, comatose patient who never regained legal guardianship before parental rights were terminated. Where is she? Phoenix. Family moved to Scottsdale 2 years ago. The girl's 5 now. Attends a private kindergarten, takes ballet lessons, looks happy in the photos I found. Happy. Her daughter was happy, which should have been a relief but somehow made everything worse. Because Lily Rodriguez didn't know she was supposed to be Liliana Hale, didn't know her real mother had survived, didn't know the family that raised her, however loving, existed because of a crime. Send me everything, Avery said. There's something else. The Rodriguez family, they're affluent, connected. Father's a cardiac surgeon, mother's a former family court judge. They'll fight any custody challenge hard. You'll need ironclad proof and a damn good lawyer. I'll have both. Avery hung up and stared at the files on her screen. The evidence against Vincent and Harper. The medical records proving her identity. The documentation showing Lily's adoption was based on a false declaration of death. She had almost everything she needed, but almost wouldn't stand up in court against a powerful family who'd raised Lily for 3 years, who had legal adoption papers, who'd given her stability and love. Avery needed more than evidence. She needed Vincent and Harper exposed so thoroughly that their parental ambitions became toxic. Needed the truth about Madison's murder plastered across every news outlet. Needed public opinion so firmly on her side that when she revealed herself as Lily's birth mother, alive, victimized, fighting for her child, no judge would deny her. She needed to destroy them completely. And she needed to do it before Vincent and Harper's adoption application was approved, before they brought another child into their poisonous empire. The timeline compressed in Avery's mind. 3 months until Vincent's primary election. 6 weeks until Harper's documentary about their adoption journey was set to premiere on a major streaming platform. Avery had 6 weeks to gather the final pieces of evidence, engineer their public destruction, and emerge from the ashes as Madison Hale. 6 weeks to take back her daughter and her life. The woman in the window's reflection looked back at her, no longer entirely Avery, not quite Madison, something harder and more dangerous than either. She picked up her phone and texted her lawyer contact, the one who specialized in wrongful death cases and had agreed to review her evidence. Ready to move forward. Need a meeting ASAP. The response came back in seconds. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring everything. Avery looked at the photo of Lily the investigator had sent. a little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile, wearing a ballet leotard, looking nothing like Madison, but somehow exactly like her anyway. "I'm coming," she whispered to the image. "Mama's coming home." The flight to Phoenix felt both endless and too short. Avery stared out the window as the desert sprawled below, remembering the last time she'd seen this landscape. Falling through it, breaking against it, dying and somehow living in the same violent moment. She'd told Vincent she needed a week for personal family matters. He'd been concerned, supportive, asked if she needed anything. The kindness he showed everyone made his betrayal of Madison even more monstrous. He was capable of compassion. He just hadn't thought she deserved it. The private investigator had sent an address in Scottsdale, along with Lily's schedule. Ballet class on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 p.m. Kindergarten drop-off at 8:30 a.m. Weekend trips to the park near their home. Avery rented a car and drove to the ballet studio first. She parked across the street, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, looking like any other parent waiting in their car. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. 5 years. Her daughter was 5 years old, and Avery had missed everything. First steps, first words, first day of school. All of it stolen, irretrievable, gone. At 4:47 p.m., the studio doors opened and children poured out in pink leotards and tiny ballet shoes. Avery's breath caught as she spotted her, the girl from the photo, but real, moving, laughing as she held hands with a woman who must be her adoptive mother, Lily Rodriguez, her daughter wearing someone else's name. The little girl was beautiful. Dark curly hair pulled into a bun, deep brown eyes, a smile that was Madison's smile, and a determined set to her chin that was all her own. She skipped next to her mother, chattering about something Avery couldn't hear, full of life and confidence and joy. Avery wanted to run to her, wanted to scoop her up and never let go, wanted to tell her everything. "I'm your mother. I survived. I've been looking for you. I love you. I've always loved you." But she couldn't. Not yet. Not until Vincent and Harper couldn't contest custody, couldn't twist the narrative, couldn't claim she was unstable or dangerous or a threat to the child's well-being. The woman, Dr. Isabel Rodriguez, the PI's report said, helped Lily into a BMW SUV. She was gentle with her, Avery noticed, patient when Lily dropped her ballet bag and had to retrieve it, affectionate in a way that was casual, natural, earned over 5 years of daily parenting. Good. The thought was both a relief and a knife wound. She's being loved. The SUV pulled away. Avery followed at a distance, hating herself for it, but unable to stop. She watched them drive to a gated community, followed them through, slipping in behind another car. Saw them pull into the driveway of a house that was beautiful, spacious, everything Madison had wanted to give her daughter, but never got the chance. Through the window, Avery saw Dr. Rodriguez help Lily out of her leotard, saw them move into what must be the kitchen, saw the normalcy of an evening routine that had been happening for years without her. She sat in the rental car until dark, watching her daughter's life from the outside, and cried for the first time since waking up in the hospital. Avery spent 3 more days in Phoenix, learning her daughter's world. She went to the kindergarten playground during recess, staying far enough back to avoid attention, but close enough to watch Lily play. The girl was fearless, climbing to the top of the structure, laughing with friends, completely secure in her place in the world. She had Madison's compassion. Avery watched her help a younger child who'd fallen, offering a hand up and a reassuring pat, but also a boldness Madison had never possessed. This child had been raised to be confident, capable, unafraid. The Rodriguez family was everything the PI had said: affluent, educated, respected. Dr. B. Isabel Rodriguez specialized in pediatric cardiology. Her husband, Marcus Rodriguez, was in pharmaceutical research. They attended a local church, donated to schools, had family game nights that Avery could see through their front windows. They'd given Lily everything: safety, opportunity, love, the kind of stable, nurturing environment that Madison, even before Vincent's betrayal, could never have provided on an event coordinator's salary. The thought that hurt most: Lily was better off here than she would have been with Madison. But Madison hadn't been given a choice. That life had been stolen by Vincent's hands and Harper's poison. On the fourth day, Avery arranged to accidentally encounter Dr. Rodriguez at a coffee shop near the hospital where she worked. She timed it perfectly, arriving just as the doctor came in for her morning caffeine fix. "Excuse me," Avery said, bumping into her gently. "I'm so sorry." "No problem at all," Dr. Rodriguez said, smiling. She was in her mid-40s, kind eyes, the competent warmth of someone who dealt with scared children for a living. "I'm new to Phoenix," Avery continued, the lie smooth. "Any recommendations for the area?" They chatted for 5 minutes, just two strangers making small talk. Dr. Rodriguez was warm, generous with advice, mentioned she had a daughter in kindergarten at a school she recommended. Avery listened to her talk about Lily, though she didn't use her name, with obvious love and pride. "She sounds wonderful," Avery said. "She is. We're very lucky." Dr. Rodriguez checked her watch. "I should run. Good luck with the move." "Thank you." "For everything." Avery watched her leave, then sat in the coffee shop for another hour, processing what she'd learned. Dr. Rodriguez wasn't a villain. She was a good mother who'd given a home to a child who needed one. The fact that the child had been wrongly declared an orphan wasn't her fault. The adoption had been legal, handled through proper channels, based on documentation that said Madison Hale was dead, which meant the villains were still Vincent and Harper. They'd created this situation. They'd stolen Lily's right to know her birth mother. They'd stolen Avery's right to raise her daughter. And they had to pay for it before Avery could reclaim what was hers. Back in New York, Avery met with her lawyer, Patricia Yang, in an office that overlooked Central Park. Patricia was ruthless, expensive, and exactly who Avery needed. "Your case is complicated," Patricia said bluntly, reviewing the files Avery had brought. "The medical records prove you're Madison Hale and that Lily is biologically your daughter. But the Rodriguez family has been her legal parents for 3 years. Family court prioritizes stability for the child. Even when the adoption was based on false information. Even then, sometimes, the court will ask, what's in Lily's best interest? Staying with the family she's known her whole life, or being uprooted to live with a biological mother she doesn't remember?" "I'm not trying to uproot her," Avery said. "I want shared custody. I want her to know I exist, that I survived, that I fought to come back to her." "That's more reasonable. But you'll still need to prove several things. That you're stable, that you can provide a good home. That reunification with you serves Lily's interests." Patricia leaned back. "And you'll need to explain why you waited 5 years to come forward." "I was in a coma for 5 months. Then I had amnesia. When I finally remembered who I was, I had no identity documentation, no way to prove I was Madison Hale, no resources to fight a legal battle." Avery met Patricia's eyes. "I spent 3 years building a new identity just to survive. Then I learned what Vincent had done, and I knew I needed more than just my word against his. I needed evidence that would protect my daughter from him." "And you have that evidence?" "Almost all of it. The final pieces will fall into place in the next 3 weeks." Patricia studied her. "You're planning something. Something that will make news." "I'm planning justice. Justice looks a lot like revenge from where I'm sitting. Can't it be both? Patricia smiled slightly. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying make sure it's airtight. Because the moment you go public with this, Vincent Hale will throw everything he has at you. He'll claim you're unstable, delusional, an opportunist trying to destroy him. And the Rodriguez family's lawyers will argue that introducing you into Lily's life after 5 years of absence would be traumatic. I know. So your evidence needs to be irrefutable. Your mental health documentation needs to be perfect. Your intentions need to be pure as snow. Patricia slid a document across the desk. I've prepared a petition for custody hearing. We'll file it simultaneously with your public reveal. Hit them with legal action and public exposure at the same time, so they're fighting on multiple fronts. Avery took the document, scanning the legal language that would formally begin her fight to reclaim her daughter. The Rodriguez family will hate me, she said quietly. Probably. But they'll also understand eventually. They're good people who made a legal adoption based on false documentation. They were victims of Vincent's crime too, in a way. And Lily? Patricia's expression softened. Children are resilient. And from what you've described, the Rodriguez family raised her well. She'll adjust, especially if you're patient, if you let her come to you at her own pace. I've been patient for 5 years. Then a little longer won't kill you. Patricia stood, offering her hand. Destroy Vincent Hale. Make sure he never gets near another child. And then come back to me with evidence that will hold up in family court. We'll get you time with your daughter. Avery shook her hand, grateful and terrified in equal measure. Time. Not full custody, maybe not even primary custody. But time with Lily. The chance to know her daughter, to let Lily know her. It would have to be enough. On the flight back to New York, Avery pulled up the photo of Lily on her phone. She'd taken it secretly at the playground. Lily mid-laugh, hanging from the monkey bars, utterly unself-conscious and free. I'm doing this for you, Avery whispered to the image. So you'll know your mother survived. So you'll understand that I never stopped fighting to come back. So you'll be safe from the man who tried to kill us both. The plane descended toward JFK, and Avery felt the final pieces of her plan crystallizing. 3 weeks until Vincent's primary debate, Harper's documentary premiering 2 days after. Both events designed to showcase their perfect life, their commitment to children, their worthiness for power and influence. Avery was going to turn their triumph into their apocalypse, and when the dust settled, when the truth was finally told, Lily would know that her mother had loved her enough to crawl back from the dead. That would have to be enough. The final pieces came together with the precision of a surgical strike. Avery returned to New York with renewed purpose. Every action now pointed toward a single date, the primary debate scheduled for 3 weeks out at the Paramount Theater. Vincent would be on stage, live television, thousands watching in person, and millions via stream. Harper would be in the audience, cameras capturing her supportive presence. Their documentary would premiere 48 hours later, cementing their narrative as champions for children. Avery was going to shatter that narrative so completely there'd be nothing left but truth and ruins. First, the financial evidence. Avery had been collecting it for months. Foundation donations funneled into Vincent's personal investment accounts, charitable contributions that somehow ended up funding his campaign. A web of financial impropriety that crossed into fraud territory. But it needed verification, documentation that would survive legal scrutiny. She reached out to Marcus Devine, the wildlife photographer who'd found Madison in the canyon. He'd stayed in touch with Desert Regional, checking on the miracle patient periodically. When Avery contacted him through an encrypted email explaining who she was and what she needed, his response was immediate. "I knew something was wrong," he wrote back. "A pregnant woman doesn't just slip off a cliff. I'll help however I can." Marcus had contacts at the hospital, access to records that Avery's PI couldn't legally obtain. Within a week, she had certified copies of everything: the Jane Doe admission, the C-section records, DNA samples taken during her treatment that could prove Lily was her biological daughter. "What happened to you was evil," Marcus wrote in his final message. "Make them pay. Avery intended to." Second, the digital trail. Avery had been monitoring Vincent and Harper's communications through their campaign devices she had administrative access to as communications director. She'd installed monitoring software months ago, collecting deleted emails, private messages, incriminating conversations. The most damning exchange was from 6 years ago, recovered from a backup Harper apparently forgot existed. Harper. She suspects something. Vincent. Madison. She doesn't suspect anything. She's too trusting. Harper. What if she finds out about us? You'll lose half of everything in a divorce. Vincent. Then we make sure there's no divorce. Harper. What are you saying? Vincent. I'm saying accidents happen, especially in dangerous places, especially to pregnant women who aren't watching where they're going. Harper. Vincent. You can't be serious. Vincent. I'm always serious about protecting what's mine. The messages continued, showing Harper's initial resistance evolving into acceptance. Then, active participation in planning. She researched Canyon Ridge. She suggested the weekend trip. She created an alibi for Vincent by being photographed at a spa in Scottsdale during the exact window when Madison fell. It was all there: premeditation, conspiracy, murder. Avery copied everything to a secure drive and sent duplicates to her lawyer, a journalist she trusted at the Times, and a contact at the FBI who specialized in cold cases. Third, the public strategy. This couldn't just be a legal case. It needed to be a cultural moment, a story so compelling that public opinion became its own form of justice. Avery drafted a statement. Madison Hale's return from the dead, told in her own words. She detailed the fall, the coma, the amnesia, the years of rebuilding. She explained how she'd discovered Vincent's betrayal and methodically gathered evidence. She made it clear this wasn't revenge. It was survival. She recorded a video testimonial, showing her scars, sharing medical records, displaying the evidence in a way that was both devastating and undeniable. Her face, no longer hidden behind Avery Quinn's armor, appeared on camera as Madison's face, older and harder, but unmistakably the same woman from wedding photos 6 years ago. "My name is Madison Hale," she said to the camera, "and I'm here to tell you what happens when you try to kill a mother." The week before the debate, Avery moved into position. She maintained her role as communications director, briefing Vincent on talking points, prepping Harper for media interviews, acting like everything was normal, but she also met with her FBI contact, turning over the complete evidence file, met with Patricia Yang to finalize the custody petition, met with the Times journalist to coordinate the story's release. "This is going to be huge," the journalist said, reviewing the materials. "Career-ending for Hale, possibly criminal charges." "Good," Avery said. "What about you? You're going to be under intense scrutiny. Your methods, your infiltration of his campaign. Some people will call it deceptive. I call it survival. I was declared legally dead, and my daughter was stolen. I did what I had to do to expose the truth and protect her from the man who tried to kill us both." The journalist nodded. "That'll play. Survivor narrative always does. And your evidence is solid enough to back it up. When do we publish?" "The morning of the debate." Gives him no time to prepare a response. He'll have to face it on live television. Perfect. Exactly what Avery wanted. The night before the debate, Vincent took Avery to dinner, a celebration of their preparation, a thank you for her work. Harper joined them, the three of them toasting to Vincent's imminent victory. "I couldn't have done this without you," Vincent said, raising his glass to Avery. "You've been invaluable. More than that, you've been family." Avery clinked her glass against his, met his eyes directly, and smiled. "Family is everything," she agreed. Harper leaned over, hugging Avery with wine-fueled warmth. "After the election, we're making your position permanent. Chief of Staff. You'll help us change everything." "I'm counting on it," Avery said. They had no idea. Sitting across from them, smiling and toasting, was the woman they'd tried to murder, the ghost they'd created, the reckoning they'd never seen coming. Avery went home that night and barely slept. She reviewed the plan one final time, checking every contingency, making sure nothing could go wrong. At 6 a.m., the Times article went live. Senate candidate Madison Hale, accused of murdering wife, dead woman, returns with evidence of attempted murder. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Social media exploded. News networks scrambled to verify. Vincent's phone started ringing before he'd even woken up. Avery sent him a text at 6:30. "We need to talk. Emergency meeting before the debate." His response came back panicked. "What the hell is happening? Where are you?" "On my way to your office." But she wasn't going to his office. She was going to the Paramount Theater, where cameras were already setting up, where moderators were reviewing questions, where in 6 hours Madison Hale would have to face the truth on live television. And Madison Hale, alive, armed with evidence, ready to reclaim everything, would be waiting. The Paramount Theater buzzed with chaos. Campaign staff rushed through hallways, phones pressed to ears, trying to contain a scandal that was already everywhere. News crews that had come to cover a political debate now smelled blood in the water and weren't leaving. Avery walked through the backstage entrance like she owned it, because for months she had. Security nodded her through without question. She moved past green rooms and production areas to the main stage, where debate moderators were in heated discussion with network executives. "We can't just ignore this," one of them argued. "Madison Hale is alive. The evidence is substantial. We have to ask about it. If it's true Hale is done, we'll be part of the story. We're already part of the story. The question is whether we do our jobs or protect a potential murderer." They didn't notice Avery listening from the wings. She smiled, satisfied. The journalists had integrity. Vincent would face questions he couldn't dodge. Her phone buzzed. "Vincent." "Where are you? I need you here now." She didn't respond. Let him panic. Let him understand for just a few hours what it felt like to have the ground disappear beneath your feet. 2 hours before the debate, Avery revealed herself. She walked into the press room where journalists were gathering, where cameras were already live streaming to audiences waiting for any update on the scandal. She'd changed clothes. No more Avery Quinn's power suits. She wore simple black pants and a white blouse, her hair down the way Madison used to wear it, her face free of the armor that had protected her identity for 3 years. "My name is Madison Hale," she said to the room, and the explosion of questions was immediate. She held up her hand. "I'll make a statement, then I'll answer questions. But first, I need everyone to understand something. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for my daughter." The room quieted. 6 years ago, my husband Vincent Hale pushed me off a 200-foot cliff in Arizona while I was 7 months pregnant. He did it because I'd become inconvenient to his ambitions, because his mistress, Harper Sloan, convinced him that a wife and child would ruin the life they wanted to build. She pulled up images on the projector, her medical records, photos from the hospital, the DNA evidence linking her to Lily.